So the big news coming out last week, not only for the Detroit Tigers, but for Major League Baseball in general. Justin Verlander making his return to the Tigers. He was traded at the trade deadline to the Houston Astros back in 2017 and immediately able to help to win several World Series. Played with a couple different teams since then. He did eventually go off to the Mets, which was a disaster, and then he ended up going right back to Houston. And then last year he spent a one-off season with the San Francisco Giants. And then here he is, back with Detroit for his age 43 season. And a few days ago had I want to call a reintroductory press conference down in Lakeland ahead of spring training with the Detroit Tigers. And some interesting comments made in that. Specifically, that he was pretty much right when the season ended. This past season, he was already thinking Detroit then.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was definitely in the back of my mind. I mean, I grew up in front of the fans in Detroit. I grew up in Detroit. I mean, I was a 21-year-old when I got here in Lakeland for the first time, and just so much history here. Last year was, when we got kind of knocked out of the playoff run, and towards the end, I was sitting there thinking about where I wanted to be, and Detroit just kept coming to my mind. As soon as the season was over, I called Scott, called Chris, called AJ, and let my intentions be known.
So that's pretty interesting that this whole thing was pretty much initiated by him. And he's still pitching pretty well for his age. We'll talk about his numbers in a bit. But, for his age, he was able to pitch some pretty quality innings for the San Francisco Giants last season, specifically the second half of the season. But, he knows his days in Major League Baseball are numbered, just getting up there. Father Time is undefeated. And, it's been weighing on him. I actually saw a story recently that he actually never really wanted to leave Detroit to begin with. Talking about that trade deadline in 2017. It was where, the Tigers had agreed to trade him to the Houston Astros as the Tigers were ready to embark on a pretty painful rebuild. And it was pending his approval. And he said, no, I want to stay with Detroit. And then eventually kind of went back on that and said, okay, let's do it. And the fax went through right at 11:59 p.m., like mere seconds before the deadline there. Did that fax go through to the Major League offices to secure his trade to Houston, where he immediately won a World Series. But obviously, he just talked about, he was the one kind of trying to initiate a return to Detroit, and he was talking about when that became a reality.
Not really. I think at first it didn't seem like there was much room for me, and I think we had some very candid conversations, Scott and I, and I think unfortunately there were some things that happened recently where some innings that I think they were planning on aren't going to be filled. So I think that opened the door. It's not the way you want it to go. Obviously, there's a lot of young talent here. They've done a great job of bringing guys in. Hey, I'm happy to be wearing the Old English D again, and happy to be here.
So yeah, it's really special to have Justin Verlander now in the fold. But it unfortunately came with that cost of Reese Olson, who suffered a setback in his return from injury. Of course, he missed the last chunk of games last season. Some hope for him to return in time for the playoffs, maybe right at the end of the regular season, but that just never ended up coming to pass. And then, him pretty much being down with another surgery, gonna miss this entire season. That's what really freed up the spot for Justin Verlander. So again, very unfortunate with Reese Olson, but hey, at the gain of bringing back Justin Verlander, who, as I mentioned, can still pitch some quality innings at his age, and hey, it's a return of a franchise icon for this Tigers team, especially considering the last 30 years. This is one of the key guys of this franchise. And just seeing him specifically with this press conference, seeing him put on the Tigers jersey again, just very special. It makes every Tigers fan, just like, it just feels good seeing this guy with the Tigers again. Seeing him with the Astros just never really looked right, even though he pitched phenomenally with the Astros. And then afterwards with the Mets, and then last year with the Giants, just doesn't look right seeing him with any other jersey on. But seeing him with the old English D, just absolutely phenomenal. Here he is talking about what he hopes to accomplish this season.
The one thing, obviously, I would like to accomplish in Detroit that I had a couple shots at that I really regret not achieving was a World Series title. Mr. I was such an incredible owner and somebody that I really admired. And, talking to Chris this offseason and seeing, how the torch got passed down and how he's going for it again, like his dad did, just had the opportunity to be back here and be on a World Series caliber team where you come into spring training and you have that feeling like, hey, we can win it all. That there's not many teams. I've been very fortunate to be part of a lot of the teams in Detroit and post-Detroit. That the second you step in here, there's just a different vibe, and what the ultimate goal is. The game has changed a lot, and there's a lot of teams that don't have that luxury when they step in the locker room in spring training. So that's not something to shy away from. I think that's something to embrace. We have a great ball club, and I embrace that and want to win one.
And how amazing would that be for this season? I mean, hypothetically, it just makes me think of Peyton Manning with the Denver Broncos. Having that riding off into the sunset, had that Super Bowl 50 win with the Broncos, and then immediately into retirement. I think one can hope, one can dream for this Tigers team that it ends up lining up like that with Justin Verlander goes off, wins a couple World Series with the Astros, and then comes back here and helps deliver one to Detroit. They've been starved for a World Series championship since the 80s, last 40 years. As he mentioned, a couple trips there, and had some really, really good teams. But just unfortunately during his first tenure with the Tigers, just not able to go. And we've talked about with baseball how much needs to go right in a playoff run to bring home a World Series championship. Now, looking at the roster overall, I'll do more in a couple weeks, the specific Tigers season preview, looking at the roster as a whole. But, it's clear the front office, probably more than anything, was really invested in the Tarek Skubal situation, what was going on there in terms of arbitration and potentially kicking the tires on a trade. We still don't know, how that even went in terms of any trade discussions, but Skubal won his arbitration. He will be pitching this year for the Tigers, and then will be going off into unrestricted free agency next offseason, which still really makes me wince. I really hope the Tigers and Skubal are able to get some sort of an extension done before that. I really just don't want him going to unrestricted free agency. But anyways, it's really just pitching is what this team was focused on upgrading. You've got Framber Valdez. That's a big signing for the Tigers. Signed him to a 3-year deal. Tarek Skubal obviously back out of arbitration. They re-signed, didn't really resign, but Jack Flaherty picking up his player option. He's back in the fold. Justin Verlander obviously in the fold. And then, other than that, getting a Kenley Jansen. He's going to be in the bullpen. Kyle Finnegan, getting him re-signed was pretty big. Drew Anderson, another guy that they picked up. So some of those pitching moves for this Tigers team has been the main focal point for them. I know a lot of people wanted them to make some more, bring in another impact bat. I could kind of see why they didn't, though, because looking at where they were, last season, the first half of the season, they were hitting really well, hitting the ball extremely well, but, just unfortunately, the last kind of third of the season and then in the playoffs, just the batting kind of fell apart, but a lot of reasons to still be optimistic with the hitting abilities of this team. Again, we'll talk more about that later, closer to the start of the season. But here's some comments by Justin Verlander on being back around the team facilities.
Yeah, the facilities are very different, very upgraded. I had a lot of people tell me it's not the same Detroit that you experienced. So I'm especially at home. So excited to see all the changes. A lot of new faces, a few old ones, which is, pretty nostalgic, especially in the media, you guys. The players had a lot of changeover. There's not too many. There's no players left. Yeah, man. I think the weirdest part is actually kind of like driving into Lakeland. I haven't been back in Lakeland. Spent a lot of time here, lived here for the majority of my career in Detroit in the off season. So coming back here was interesting and kind of brought back a lot of memories and emotions. You walk into the locker room and like Scoob is showing me around the locker room, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, there you are on the wall." It's like, all right, that's cool, I guess. So there's a lot of emotions running through, and I haven't really processed them all yet.
Speaking of Scooble, Verlander asked about teaming up in the Tigers' starting rotation with reigning two-time Cy Young winner Tarek Skubal.
I mean, the thing I'm looking forward to most is just watching him pitch every 5 days. Obviously his resume speaks for itself. I just wanted to introduce myself last year. Didn't really know each other, but I felt like with what he's doing here in Detroit, and like our names are kind of always linked. I think it was. I just wanted to introduce myself and say hi. But I'm excited to just see him work, and I think the thing that you can learn from anybody, adapt or die. Like I try to learn always. I asked Framber back in Houston how he throws his curveball, because that thing's nasty. So I wanted to learn that. I'm excited to just learn, see his routine, see what he does behind the scenes. If there's anything I can help with, or if there's anything he can help me with, guys that are that great. There's always something to glean from that.
And those are some pretty interesting comments. Even him at his age, with his level of experience, him actually referring to Tarek Skubal as teaching him some things. Especially we know with Tarek Skubal, a deadly fastball and changeup combo. But I look forward to seeing that pairing and seeing what kind of wisdom that Justin Verlander can impart on this Detroit Tigers team, specifically the pitchers. And looking at Verlander's numbers last season, 385 earned run average, a little bit of a higher whip, 1.362, which the last two seasons, that's been kind of getting up there a little bit. But looking at some of his other numbers, he's still really good at throwing strikeouts. His strikeout numbers are still kind of in line with the bulk of his career. He did throw, a little bit too many walks, home runs still. He had a pretty big step forward in terms of allowing home runs compared to the year before with Houston. And then, of course, the amount of hits he's given up a little bit higher than where he was earlier in his career. But, I guess what I'm getting at is, not prime Justin Verlander, but still a very serviceable arm for this Tigers team. And we'll see what he's got. But again, very exciting signing for the Detroit Tigers. And it just feels good to have him back with Detroit. And, we'll see if the Tigers can put it together this year. And we'll see if they can help get Justin Verlander a World Series win, but in Detroit this time around, which I definitely think they have the pieces. They definitely have the pitching staff. Definitely looks to be very well-rounded. Some quality starters, top to bottom, and then a quality bullpen as well. Lots of good guys there. And then, again, look at how the team played up until the All-Star break last season. Dominant. Just about trying to figure out how to make that be a full season thing with the Tigers, how to put that together for a full season and try to make a run at the World Series. But, some good comments there from Justin Verlander, and eager to see this team, especially in spring training, some of their first games coming up this weekend. And then in the next couple of weeks, seeing them in some spring training action, and then on into the regular season at the end of next month and start of April, which what are they starting on the road against the Padres, which obviously you already know Tarek Skubal is going to be the opening day starter. But I really hope they wait to use Justin Verlander until the home opener. Just imagine that crowd reaction, seeing him go back on the mound for the first time in the Old English D for the Detroit Tigers for the first time since 2017. 9 years. Nearly 9 years since he's been with the Tigers. So definitely going to be fun to look forward to.
If you missed today's installment of On the Docket, podcast it at foxsports1019.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to tune in live weekdays at noon on Jackson's Fox Sports 101.9 FM.